Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and it is time for another tasting video. And thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you are a fan of these videos. I would love to have you on board, and make sure that you comment as well if you feel the urge during this when I'm saying something to go, yeah, I agree. No, that doesn't work for me. I had a completely different experience. Because this is the thing about whiskey. Whiskey is very subjective, and what I like may not be what you like. That's why I give tasting notes. I do say whether I think it's a good whiskey, very good whiskey, excellent whiskey, or just okay, or I'm not going to ever buy it again. That's my own personal opinion. Don't take that to the bank. Listen to the tasting notes that I give you. But I mean, if something really impresses me, I'm going to stand out and I'm going to say something about it. Now, this particular whiskey, Westland Sherry Oak, this is an American single malt, comes from Washington State, and it's 46% alcohol by volume, no non-chill filtered, and no colorant added, and aged a minimum of 3 years. This is a very interesting whiskey because Westland has 3, and I had a chance to taste all 3 of them, and I did the tasting while I was in the kitchen, and I kind of rushed through them, and it wasn't really a great experience. First of all, the kitchen's the worst place to do your tasting because there's going to be other smells in there, and that's going to kind of break it up. Being in a rush, that's not going to help because I'm kind of going one to the next and not giving each their due, and so I didn't really get a great feel for any of the 3 whiskeys. Then I ended up going out with Chris Riesbeck, the VP of sales for Westland, to a local cigar bar, and we did a tasting again. Now, I've already done a video on the peated whiskey, and the American Oak will be coming up around the time that I share my interview with him on Whiskey Lore, the Interviews podcast. But when I went there, this Sherry Oak was not really even in the running for me. I was so looking forward to seeing how he presented the peated, and I was looking forward to tasting the peated again in a little bit more relaxed atmosphere around friends in the cigar bar. And an interesting thing happened. And this is something that I really want to stress to you as a lover of whiskey. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. Sometimes you have to not go with the crowd, because everybody in that crowd was going, oh, I love the American Oak. Oh, that peated is great. And I was oddly, all of a sudden, overwhelmed with this one. So I'm going to do a nosing and a tasting of this for you, and then give you an idea of what my experience with this particular whiskey is. So this is maple syrup. And that may put some people off, because I know people who are not big fans of Canadian whiskey because they all come at you with maple. But this is like that warm, it's like you get a little grain with that pancake. Pancakes probably got, in this case, it'd have raisins because this is a sherried whiskey, and this just warm pancake syrup kind of hits your nose. That's the kind of experience this gives off. There's a little cinnamon and raisin with it. You get a little bit of oak, and there's an interesting char note that comes in on the nose. This whiskey does not hide from your senses. It actually is a very full nose that comes on this particular whiskey. Now, it's a 5-grain whiskey. It is aged in Oloroso PX cask, Pedro Jimenez, and also in 2 American Oak barrels, one toasted more than charred, the other one charred more than toasted. And interesting thing, GlenDronach is probably my favorite sherried whiskey distillery, and they do this wonderful thing of taking Oloroso sherry, which can be darker in casks, and then PX, which is brighter in casks, and they'll blend their whiskeys together, except in the 18, and it just makes a really nice combination. Sometimes Oloroso sherry gets a little too heavy for me. It just becomes too fig, too plum, too raisin, and then PX kind of offsets that and brings back some of the brighter flavors, and I think balances out a whiskey. So I love that this Washington State distillery has decided to do that, but also thrown in the extra very interesting piece of putting in American oak in 2 different barrels, and not used barrels, but new barrels. And I think that's where that little bit of char comes through. Cheers. This is a roller coaster. Oh, it starts off with grain, and then it goes, and this is what caught me, and it did more the other night than it's doing now, but it's still there. It's like all of a sudden it comes out of that grain, and this jelly belly bright fruit comes out, a very sherry note, probably the PX cask. Wow, I mean, it just hits a wave and then comes back down, and you're back into the plum and raisin, maple syrup throughout the entire experience. Sugar cookies, I do get sugar cookies in this. Man, it blew me away, actually. I was in a room filled with smoke, and I think because of that, when I drank this while I was there, that wave of PX was really aggressive and surprised me. I was like, whoa, where did that sweet flavor come from all of a sudden? And then it went back in. I think it's a combination along with that nice maple syrup thing that's going on. Man, that's nice. And it is a long finish. I mean, it just keeps on hanging in there. And so while everybody's going, I love the American oak, I love the peated, I'm like, I'm standing up for the sherry, man. This is good. And you, as a whiskey fan, need to do that. And that's why I say at the beginning of this video, I'm giving you my opinion. You can say, you're full of it, man. This stuff sucks. And that's fine. Leave your comments below and say, dude, I've had that, and I don't think that it's either too sweet for me or whatever. But that's where our individual palates come in, and I think you got to stand up for it. And that's why I really don't necessarily love doing ratings, because I think that is totally unfair to the whiskey, because you can love a whiskey that gets a low score on somebody's scale, and who cares? Because if you like it, then you should buy it. You should enjoy it. And when you look at the store shelf and you see that there are whiskeys on that shelf that you say, that is the worst whiskey, why is it there? Because somebody likes it. Now, it may be for price. It may be that they use it in mixers and that sort of thing, but, somebody likes it. So I don't like putting down whiskeys and saying, the worst I'm going to say is, I won't buy that again. This was fine. I tasted it. It's not really my speed. I'm not going to go back to it, but I would go back to this. And so I'm going to have to go to the store and find a bottle, because this is disappearing, and this is a chance to really taste what an American distillery can do with sherry oak in a single malt. And I think this is a great representation. And maybe being close to that Canadian border brought a little maple down for them. But wow, man, I mean, it's an interesting combination. And I really like it. I mean, and it's funny, because Chris Riesbeck, who I've got the interview coming up with on Whiskey Lore, the interviews, he said that I should watch a movie called Bottle Shock with Alan Rickman. I love Alan Rickman. And he said you should watch it. It's a very interesting movie. And it's all about how the French wine dealer comes to the U.S., tries out all these Napa Valley whiskeys in 1976 when nobody really knew what Napa Valley was all about. Goes back, puts them in a blind competition against the French French wines, in a whiskey mindset. And all of a sudden, it's like the French whiskeys don't hold up to the Napa Valley whiskey, wins the competition. First time California gets a thumbs up, and it was during a blind tasting. I'm telling you, I think you could put this up against a lot of whiskeys from Scotland that, I think this would hold its own. I really think this would hold its own. Like I say, it's going to be a little sweeter, but man, if that hits your palate, then more power to you. Very nice. A little baking spice on the nose as well. Just really, really good whiskey. That is my review of Westland Sherry Oak, and like I said, I'm going to go run and buy a bottle of it now. So anyway, until next time, cheers and Slainte.